Friends, chatting with Jenn Lim, the author of Beyond Happiness. We're talking about creating a healthy, happy work culture that extends even beyond the workplace and even inside of you and your own life. We're talking about Dr. Joe Dispenza as well. Jenn, what else?
We're talking about tea and
quiet
quitting and great resignation turning into a great awakening of who we are authentically as human beings and what we really, really want to be and live in life in an aware state.
So many gems in this episode. Don't forget to hit subscribe. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Better Together. When you know better, you get better. That's what we do here every single day. Our quote for today: learn how to revitalize your work and workspace, starting with your own happiness. That is from Jenn Lim. What up, Hill Squad? Welcome back. We're going to be chatting with Jenn Lim today, best-selling author of Beyond Happiness, right here, and the CEO of Delivering Happiness, a company all about creating happier company cultures for a more profitable and sustainable approach to business. Very interesting stuff here. Jenn used to be a consultant for Zappos. She worked with Tony Hsieh, the late CEO of Zappos.com, to create a happier company culture. And her mission is to teach businesses how to cultivate cultures that generate profit, sustain all people at every level of the organization with humanity. Whoa. I could have used her for all of my, my years.
I know.
And to share how we can make an impact by being true to our authentic selves. And she says, Kelsey, as you mentioned, that anything we talk about today is applicable to you as a human too.
Yep.
I guess it's probably like in your microtransactions and stuff, right?
Yeah, I would think so. And I'm excited to get into it with her because even, she has a couple really cool sayings or acronyms or things in the book. And she was like, okay, yeah, but that also applies to you as a, a girlfriend or a wife or you in your daily life. So anything we talk about and she talks about, I'm sure she'll get into, it applies to you. It's not just about work. It's also about life.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Kelsey.
Yes.
What do you think makes a good work culture? What is a good work culture to you? And did you ever think about it like that?
Not really, actually. I mean, I think when you have a good work culture, you don't necessarily think like what makes a good work culture. Like when I've been in bad ones, I know like why they're bad. So I guess I'll come at it from that way. Like
first, I'll take the compliment.
But it's true.
Thank you.
I mean
That's the best compliment ever.
I mean it though. It's like I never think of it that way because we do have a good one, but like I knew when I was in a bad one.
Me too.
Why it was bad, and it's often we hear this a lot, but it's like from the top it trickles down, right? And it was just so toxic, and they didn't give a crap about anyone besides themselves, and just like nasty. I mean, it's hard because they were just so beyond, like, I mean, we were in the same place. It was just, I don't know. So when just general kindness, I think, is nice. And God, I don't know. I've never thought of it this way. I don't know why.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely like an old paradigm where, the whole thought was you're paid, do the job, and I'm not supposed to care about you or your life or anything like that. And it's just not the way.
No.
You have to care about your people as much as you want them to care about you and the job, in my opinion. When we were with any business that we've had or done, we've always had a very familial culture, and we've gotten some flack for that because people believe in the opposite, right? Keep everything separate and all of that. But we don't know how to kind of operate any other way. You get your heart broken here or there, but ultimately, why should I expect you to care about me if I don't care about you? It's already hard enough to have somebody care about you in your business. There are the rare people, and I was one of them, even when I worked at Dunkin' Donuts, I thought that was my store. And I cared about it like it was my store.
Yep.
Because I had a relationship with the owner, Mr. Bill Gladys, shout out. And I looked after it like it was my own, and I would report to him if I saw anything I didn't think was good. I was 13, 14, 15.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, but I always had that mentality. And the problem with it was when I applied it to people that didn't care back. And because they didn't care back, I thought I had to do more and more and more. And that was a vicious cycle because they loved it. Then they knew exactly how to get me, right?
That's a good point.
Any gold stars. Don't give any reward. Don't give them any thanks, because then they'll keep trying to prove themselves. So I just found an old journal when we were doing our shoot recently. I was looking for journals, and it said, I forgive myself for feeling like I have to prove my self-worth to others. And my new awareness, I know that I'm a kind and giving person and blah, blah, blah. Like I had worked with Diane Portia. You can go back and deep into the files for Diane Portia's episode. She's in the documentary Heal. And what I really loved about that is I was trying to cement into my head, I don't need to be the puppy dog. Like, now do you like me? Now am I good? Because they weren't the right people in the first place.
You shouldn't have to do that. If it's the right people, you don't have to do that.
Right.
And like you're saying, like you want to do that. Like with you guys, I want to do more because first of all, I care so much about the show, but I also care about you guys, and but you care about me.
Yeah.
So I want to give and do more. And yeah, you shouldn't have to be in that place of, because I was there too. I'm like, oh my God, yeah, what else can I do? But they don't give a crap.
No, the wrong people don't.
Exactly, the wrong people. So.
But then what they get is they get to be in last place in the ratings. Right?
Absolutely.
But the thing is, or they aren't going to succeed the way, because that culture isn't going to succeed, especially in this time, I don't think.
I agree.
But I know that being like that to Kevin when he was my boss, I guess he's always going to be my boss. That's a joke. I'm the boss. But anyway, he gave me the gold star. He gave me the reciprocation. Bill did at Dunkin' Donuts, like wherever. And I watched that with my dad too. My dad over-delivered for everybody. My dad was cleaning nightclubs. We're still best friends with the owners and having them at our house because they love my dad so much. They love all of us so much because we gave them everything we had, right? My dad showed me that by example, but you got to be careful who you give that to. They have to give you something back. They have to give you that love back in some way, shape, or form. And so it's really being mindful of, is this person reciprocating? Do they really care back? It will be evident if you really sit and take stock, if they do or they don't, right? I've definitely been in a lot of situations where it hasn't been reciprocated, but I thought if I kept applying the same model that always got me good results, it would work. And it doesn't. Not in those situations. In fact, they can use it against you. So a good work culture, in my opinion, is a culture that is going to care about you. And so if you are sick, they're not thinking, okay, when can she get back to work? Like whatever. It's how do we work through this? How do we get you healthy? How do we figure out a better way? Or there's something really important to you. And God, like I had situations where I couldn't go see someone dying in my family. They wouldn't let me leave. I couldn't even take my vacation. It was like really toxic and really nasty and really just bad. Those are just evident situations,
Jen would not approve of that.
No, like even right now, I had built this whole kind of trip in December thinking because I shoot this show for Roku. By the way, we haven't talked about Roku recommends in a minute, but we recommend all the best shows on TV. So you can catch us on your Roku home screen. But I thought we were only shooting early December. So I'm going to shoot this show for MTV for the Challenge reunion in London. And I planned this whole trip. We were going to go to Finland after and do this whole amazing Northern Lights experience. And I woke up this morning with a knowing. And I said, let me just check the Roku dates. Did I check the Roku dates? And I had assumed, which I try to teach you guys, will always get you into trouble,
Yep.
that 12, that first week of December was the only date. And it wasn't. But I have really great people that I work with over there. So I went to them directly and I said, hey, is there a way we could push the shoot 2 days later? And, I know they're going to try. I know they're going to. So that's a really good work culture. When I go in, they really try to be accommodating and helpful and caring and stuff. There are other people in the periphery that maybe aren't as great, but that's a different story. Those are my choices that I got to make better choices for. But the team at Funny or Die that we work with is so great. So yeah, I think it's let's all kind of take stock and awareness. And then here's the thing. If you do have a company that's reciprocative, is that a word? Look it up, Elaine. I think it is.
Ooh, let's see.
If it is, not the word, if it is reciprocative, remember that. Because sometimes it's just like any relationship. You can end up becoming very one way and very narcissistic in the relationship where they're giving now and you're not giving back. So like any relationship, there has to be a balance, right? Like I have to try to balance Kevin's overgiving, which is impossible. But I have to really try because it could become very one way. And so remember that as well, so that you can keep in check as well and know that like it's supposed to be both ways, right? Like if I need you to come in, we're doing something and gosh, we couldn't finish our shoot Friday, we have to do it Saturday. It's going to be like, it can't be an issue because
make it work.
Because anytime you need to go and leave at moment's notice or not be here, I'm like, of course, no problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And that's why it's
give and take.
It's reciprocative.
Which is
Let's check
a
in with
word.
Elaine.
It is
Yes,
a word.
It is a word. I knew it.
Elaine.
It is a word.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's an adjective given or done or owed to each other. That's
Thank
what it
you,
means.
Elaine.
You're welcome.
Reciprocative.
Reciprocative.
Love that. Maybe that's the title of Jen's new book after this. Reciprocative.
Don't give her my title. It's my title.
Well, she'll credit you.
Okay.
You guys can co-author.
Reciprocated. That's what people usually use, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Reciprocated.
that's in a different tense. Like he reciprocated or she reciprocated or they reciprocated.
nice.
Did y'all think you're getting an English lesson?
Reciprocative. Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, that's our little intro to Jenn Lim. Let's get her inside the Zoom. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back, and we'll be talking about how to be more reciprocative in the workplace. No, we'll be talking about creating a good work culture. Jenn, thank you for joining us, and we're really excited to talk about building and cultivating a good work culture. We were chatting before, and it's funny because I asked Kelsey, I said, what do you think creates a good work culture? And she was a little stumped. She said, well, I think when you're in one, you don't think about what it could be. But when you're in a bad one, you really know. And so we were having that whole conversation. And I was also mentioning how, Kevin and I, we definitely were criticized early on for always being involved and like caring about the people that are working with us, right? So we care about them as much as we want them to care about us. That's our motto, right? You can't expect people to care about you or the job if you don't care about them. And so for us, if there was a problem in their life or whatever that we could help with or we could fix, we were always jumping in. And, there's the philosophy of, they're getting paid, they got to do the job, and then that's it. But I see that every time I go into, a fast food restaurant or whatever. No one's cared about, so they don't care. And it's a cycle that's pretty vicious. So were we wrong to think like that, since you're the expert?
Well, apparently you got to figure it out because you have a happy crew, it seems.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a big part of it. I think if we actually can reframe and realize that people are assets and that we're actually reinvesting in them so that they'll reinvest in us in their own ways. Because I think it's so, especially right now, because the economy is like, oh no, like we got to, do these hiring freezes or, layoffs or whatever, and have to tighten the belt, but they don't realize that that's the worst place to tighten the belt with people.
My husband said that in the 2008 crash. He goes, we are not cutting any people. He's like, we will cut things. We went to the, guys, this is kind of intense, but we went to the point where we removed direct TVs from the house. Because we had like lots of TVs where this is our business. So we had lots of TVs. Kevin started removing direct TVs. Like I cut manicures and pedicures. I cut everything I could. And he did too. So we wouldn't have to cut bodies.
Wow. That says something. Because usually it's the first that goes. And then what happened? Did you feel like that was worth the while?
Of course. We wrote it out and everybody's still with us.
Yeah.
So it's, I mean, not everybody, because other people like move on for other reasons eventually, but yeah, it's an investment in the people that you know are amazing and you want to keep working with.
Totally. And I think, I mean, if everyone could think like you and Kevin, but what's really interesting is that over the last 15 years, no matter what type of economy we're in, those people or those companies that are consistently they're double downing on their people. Like they're the top Glassdoor places to work or the great places to work. Or
what's a top Glassdoor? What does that mean?
So Glassdoor, like that website, glassdoor.com. So essentially it's like, it's created to have rating systems of employers.
Oh,
so essentially employees can go on there and talk all they want. It could be anonymous or whatever, but
no way.
So they start rating employers. So those employers at top are those that employees actually say they're a good place to work. So,
wow.
So there's that, and there's Forbes, best companies to work for. So all those companies on those lists, they have consistently outperformed the S&P 500 over the last 15 years.
Wow. You've done all the research.
Yeah. And because this is like almost the no-brainer to naysayers to the whole thing of like, why would they, be investing in people? Why do we want to make sure people are fundamentally, meaningfully happy? All that stuff. It's kind of like, well, here are the numbers. Number one, here are the stats. And then, part of it is what I believe, like you have the stats and you have the stories. And what you just shared is the story of like why it works. And what you did in a really tough time is to double down on your people, and it pays off. So it's, there's still naysayers out there, but it's just can't really say nay to the numbers.
Well, I think we're getting to a place, and I'm sure you would agree, where it's such an old paradigm. It's dying and it's not going to survive anyway. It's like almost like if somebody didn't embrace technology, like it's going to happen. You either get with it or you'll die. Like it's, that old model is dying. So you have to figure it out, which is why having someone like you that's really studied this and built these programs is really, I think, essential right now. Because first of all, the new generations aren't taking anything other than that.
Yeah.
We were ahead of the curve, thank God. We used to call Kevin the millennial whisperer when this was all first coming together. Millennials were first entering the workspace, and he's really good at it. It took me a minute, but it's not something that's you just can't avoid it.
Yeah. It's kind of like adapt or die kind of thing, especially now, especially since everyone got 2020. I mean, the whole world, right? Like when's the last time that happened that we got to experience that? So it's not just millennials now either, or Gen Zers. Because when we saw the whole quiet quitting thing, hit TikTok and then just kind of flooded all the media, it wasn't just the millennials, it was actually Gen Xers, it was baby boomers. And so I think there was a chord, like my brother says, like half joking, of course, but don't let a good pandemic go to waste. And I think that's what, some people chose to use that time that we all had, working from home, Zoom land, to reflect. And those that did are really drawing the line in the sand of, I think quiet quitting is unfortunately a bad branding job because they're not really quitting, right? It's like they're taking time for themselves and making space and mental health for themselves.
I actually want you to explain quiet quitting. I'm so glad you brought it up because I did see it trending on Twitter maybe 2 weeks ago. And I had my assumptions of what it was. So for the benefit of all of us, explain what quiet quitting really is.
Yeah.
Or maybe what it's marketed as and what it really is. I don't know. Maybe there's two answers.
Yeah, the marketing. So quiet quitting came about from TikTok when people started posting about how they want to basically work for what they get paid for and nothing more, because like this hustle culture that we've been, in for so long, and really not like being able to have those kind of conversations with our bosses or managers and being able to say, look, I need to, refuel myself. If I want to be the best for you, I got to be the best for me. So that's how it all came about, and just kind of blew up on TikTok. And I think it's unfortunate because they're not really quitting. So the real issue here is, how can employers understand what employees need for themselves, knowing that they'll be more engaged and be more productive and overall be better for the company and the team. So that's how it all got started. And now there's quiet firing, this like retaliation.
So quiet quitting. So you said it started with them thinking, the employee thinking, I only want to work, I want to be paid for the amount of work I do. Explain what that means.
Like I'll just do enough as to what I'm getting paid for. Like,
that's quiet quitting.
I'm not going to go above and beyond anymore because I need to take care of myself.
Got it. So it wasn't in a begrudging way to the employer. It's, I'm falling apart. I'm needing more mental health time. I'm needing more me time, whatever that situation is. Yeah. But why not have a conversation with their boss? Is that something that has happened, or and maybe had happened and it didn't result in something good? Or
I think, like, unfortunately, most workplaces, work environments, and this is a term that's been thrown out a lot, especially since 2020, is psychological safety, that environments mostly don't have that, where they feel when it's psychologically safe, they can feel like I can express where I'm at and not be judged, not be reprimanded, not be fired. And what's interesting is that even before 2020, Google did a really cool study called the Aristotle Survey, and essentially they wanted to understand what makes the most effective teams in their environment. And what they found, and this was a longitudinal study, it was like over years, tens of thousands of employees. And what they found was not what you would think. It's like, it wasn't the manager, it wasn't like software, it wasn't technology. It was psychological safety. So by being able to create environments for their teams to have that safety of like being able to say, hey, this is amazing, we did this, or dude, damn, I messed up and this is what happened, but this is what I'm going to learn from. So I think it's now more important than ever to create that. And unfortunately, I think that's why it's quiet quitting, is because people don't have that sense of safety to be able to express themselves authentically. But those, employers that do, that's the line in the sand that we're seeing being drawn since 2020, especially right now, because there was a Gallup poll done in the world workforce, and this was just a few months ago, that shared that a majority of people are still not altogether there, haven't really yet processed what has gone on.
I believe it. I still can't process it. I walk around dumbfounded all the time, Jen. I'm like, did we really just have the whole world shut down for 2 years? Like, did that, by the way, like 2-ish years, did that really just happen?
Yeah. That's the thing. And yet, you're a mindful person, you're intentional. So you actually are processing it in a way of just being able to ask those questions. But unfortunately, a lot of people are not even thinking that there needs to be a processing. So what we're seeing is like this level of stress and anxiety keeps on going up and up because of this disconnect of what we need to do, as human beings, to be able to say, whoa, there was some major trauma going on, and not just, COVID and losing people that we care about and love, but also just a loss of, relationships, or a loss of expectation or hope. So those are the kind of things that I think are really important that really, really tie into this whole state of mental health and where we are, just not just in the workplace, but just in general life.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like the actual physical term of long COVID that people are dealing with in terms of health. There's a
Yeah.
long COVID for mental health too. And so, the quiet quitting, it makes me sad because I wish the environments were safer for people to express themselves. Like, for example, Kelsey, if you were quiet quitting in your head, I would be crushed because I've invested so much in you and I've cared so much about you. And I would say, why didn't you come to me? Or if you were like secretly looking for other jobs behind my back or entertaining ideas of other jobs and not coming to me first and saying, hey, I feel like I have this other need, or I feel like I would be completely blindsided and so crushed because we have so many open conversations about things. So I do think that it would be, a nice message to put out for people. Like if you do have, as we called it, a reciprocative environment, to make sure that you are, open with your employer to let them know where your head is at so that they can see what they can do to be helpful. Rather than assuming, because I hate assuming. Assuming is the worst thing in the world. Assuming that they're not going to react well.
Right.
And which ones really won't. I mean, if they've already shown a pattern, then that's different. But if they've shown a different pattern, or maybe there's no pattern, nothing's happened, and you still don't give them a chance, that's kind of tough. But what's quiet firing?
So it's...
I mean, as I say it, I'm kind of coming up with probably what it is, but go ahead.
Yeah. Just a side note, though, what you just said, what you are actively doing in your conversation, in your team with Kelsey, et cetera, is like you're intentional about actually living positive values. So the values of having transparency and authenticity, like you're constantly, it sounds like you're nurturing that. And I think that's where a lot of leaders should, be thinking about. It's a journey of constantly growing and nurturing that kind of environment based on these values that are near and dear to you and your team, et cetera. But quiet firing. So it's totally not a new, phenomenon at all. It's been happening since forever. But basically it's when employers or bosses are just doing things it's kind of like reverse psychology, like make people want to quit. So they're like excluding them from conversations, not including them on in meetings or emails, and like maybe like dumping a whole bunch of work on them. So they're totally stressed and burnt out and want to quit. So just doing these very subversive tactics. And, we've seen this in workplaces forever, but now there's a new term for it. That's like PR marketing, whatever, but it is happening as well.
Wow.
As I've seen.
So quiet quitting, someone came to the dinner table the other night. Was like, oh, I've had such a bad day. And I was like, okay, what happened? And, one of my top people just quiet quitted. They've been quiet quitting about my back. And so we're asking the questions like, what happened? And their interpretation of quiet quitting was they were building a business behind their back. So using the salary that she was giving her, she was able to write a book and build a whole business. And then it was, I love you, you're amazing, but I'm going to go off and do all this stuff, which sucks. It does suck, right? Like, again, it's just, you can sugarcoat it all you want and be like, you're amazing. And I really loved working for you. And it's like, that's basically like, please don't blackball me, or please don't be, upset. But this person was building all these things behind their back. That's what they thought quiet quitting was.
I mean, I think it could be a form of it in some way, but that's a little bit more extreme, I think, of when you're utilizing other resources for your own gain. At the same time, I think that scenario is happening more and more, where people are wearing multiple hats and want to wear multiple hats, especially Gen Zers. Like for them, it's table stakes. Like I want to do X, Y, and Z things because it's part of me and I want to be authentic to that. And I think it's great. But I think us, employers and leaders, I think we should recognize, or we need to recognize, that this is how it is now. Like, unfortunately, that person did it, behind the boss's back. And of course, we don't want that. So that's why we want transparency and, all that in our environments and work environments. But that's the state of the reality of, like, and I think as progressive leaders, we should embrace it and actually tell people to pursue what they want to do in whatever forms, as long as as long as they're accountable for what they need to do for the team or the company. Otherwise, then it will be like behind people's back in that sense. But I think being able to embrace it and encourage it, it actually, studies have shown that those that have side gigs because they're passionate about it for whatever reason are actually more productive and engaged in their other gig. If, again, if everything is taken care of on all sides. So I think that's kind of the era that we live in now.
Back to Kelsey studying astrology. It's feeding her soul, but I know she's going to be doing astrological charts for people.
Oh, hell yeah. But I will say, it's funny that you just threw it to me, because what I was going to say, and even going back to earlier when you were saying that you would hope that I would speak to you, I would, because like Jen was saying, you've made it so I'm like, I feel psychologically safe.
Yeah.
My other employers, hell no.
Yeah.
Hell no would I ever, because I would have gotten slaughtered. But like you, of course I would. Because like you would help me, you've made it so like that's the environment we're in. So yeah, I think that's something that you and Kevin do, like that's amazing, is you guys want us to be happy. You're like, okay, what are your passions? Like go do that, because I know you're not going to show up unless you're like fulfilled, or unless that cup, like
exactly.
You let me host because you know that like that fills my cup, and I'm going to be better because you're letting me do that. Anyways, I just think that like you guys do that very well.
Yeah.
So I'm very grateful
Thanks,
for that.
Queen. Which is why my favorite words when she's like, I want to be with you guys forever. And I'm like, I love
It's
that.
true.
Because we want to be with you forever.
It's true though.
That's incredible. I mean, don't we wish we could all create that,
But here's the thing, Jen, I think as a leader, you have to create the environment you wish you had. So Kelsey and I both had a very bad experience. I had many of them, but we share one specific that was the worst. And when I was building my other company with Kevin, I said, Kevin, I'm not going to be there every day. It's going to be you. So he's really in charge of the culture, but we want this to be a safe haven for people to come. That's completely the opposite of what Hollywood generally is known to be, or my version of what I've experienced. So we want to care about people. We want to nurture them. We want to help them. And we're not going to be perfect. And we were not perfect, but that was our goal and our daily kind of intention to do. And so we know, Kevin, whether it was taking people to the dentist and paying for it, or, paying for whatever it was, or being there for them when they needed it, moving people, whatever it was, we tried to do it. And it was because I was dealing with so much of the opposite out there. And I know who I am. I know I'm someone who wants to over deliver and give everything I have to someone. I just kept giving it to the wrong people. And so that was a distinction I made earlier in the show before we got to you, is when you know that you are that type of person, find a reciprocative environment, and then it's good. But when you're doing it to the wrong people, they prey on you and they love it, and they know how to keep getting more out of you. They knew that I would keep being the puppy dog, racing back, waiting for a treat, waiting for the gold star, hoping for something. And if they didn't give it to me, I was going to do it harder and more and more and more.
Yeah. So how did you realize that that was the case?
I had to get a brain tumor and have brain surgery and shut it all down and start my own thing, completely get away from it, because it is that there's a lot of trauma that you have to work through, and you have to start to see things for what they are, because when you're going at the speed of light, you're never present to really understand the feelings and put all the pieces together. And that's why, for me, it was always intentional to be the opposite. And then now here with the show, it's the same thing. We want it to be a good environment. We want it to be fun. We want it to be happy, because that's what it should be. Right?
Yeah.
And so I guess, what are your top tips for people to start implementing into their culture and into their workplace to start to try to achieve this?
Yeah, well, you said something earlier that kind of like teed it up quite well. And you were saying like, don't make assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think number one, just realizing there's never a perfect time to work on your culture, never a perfect time to try and, make your employees happy. That's not what this is all about. I think number one, especially because of the last 2.5 years, is to actively ask questions and actively listen. So that's where the no assumptions part comes in, because a lot of the times I think leaders kind of think, oh, we're going hybrid now, we're going remote, therefore I need to do X, Y, and Z. But that's an assumption on their part without really listening to what are the true issues at hand. And so
doesn't that come from fear because they're afraid they're going to have to do things they don't want to have to deal with?
I think largely, yeah, because of that. And like, face it, I mean, everyone has gotten hit by this. So there's a lot of leaders out there, CEOs that I know that are they're quite quitting too. There was a new survey out about VPs. Now they're like the number one like level of an organization that are like actually quiet quitting. But going back to your question, I think number one is actively listen. What are the real issues? And there's, surveys out there, employees engagement surveys and all that stuff you can do, which is great. But again, that's just the stats and the data. What are the stories behind what people are feeling? Build that psychological safety so that you can listen to them. And then what we found and the background that I have is in science of happiness and positive psychology. So instead of focusing what's wrong with us, let's try to focus on what's right with us and improve that.
I love that.
So we found that there's like basically 4 levers that can help improve no matter where you are in your set point of happiness. It can actually, dial it up. So number one is having a sense of control or autonomy. And let's face it, 2020, no one had control or autonomy. So being able to give that sense of flexibility, like especially moms, what they had to do and their burden especially, but everyone had that loss of control. The second thing is sense of progress, making sure that your people are feeling like they're growing, developing, learning, not just career track, but as a human being. The third thing is connectedness. And this is just, the depth and breadth of your relationships. And the last thing is purpose. And simply, what are you doing? What are you being besides that's bigger than yourself, that's greater than yourself, or the team that you're part of greater than yourself? So those 4 levers, what we found, and this is again based on the science, is that no matter like where you are as a culture and your environment, like take those top 2, 3 things that are going great and celebrate it. To say this is awesome. Take the top 2, 3 things that are not great and say, these are the things we're going to work on. And I guarantee you those 4 levers can be applied to whatever it might be it, burnout, be it retention. Mental health is huge right now. So by being able to have these open conversations with transparency, you actually be able to, be more intentional about what we're fixing and remind people that, hey, it's not going to happen in a day. There's just no way. But the name of your show, we can do this together. And having that reassurance that we're not out of the woods yet, for sure. There's going to be more tough times ahead, but hey, at least we're going to do this together.
So the 4 levers that you just mentioned, those are the levers that you would work on specifically to each problem, like a burnout. How do you actually apply the 4 levers?
So for example, like one big challenge that people are having right now is the fact that, some people are remote, some people are hybrid, some people have to be, forced back to the office. So it's this connectedness. That's one of the levers, but basically people are feeling a lack of connection. It's kind of funny. I was talking to someone, she's like, yeah, I'm so looking forward to go back to hybrid and go back to the office. And when she showed up at the office, no one else was there. So it's kind of like, you got to be more intentional about, okay, so people are feeling disengaged, people are feeling lonely, people are like missing that interaction. Let's just say that's a challenge that an environment has. How can we apply connectedness to it? That's one of the levers. And so that's, being intentional about, hey, look, just be honest, we all know we're suffering from not having more FaceTime and we're on Zoom all the time. So let's do some programs together. And that's the kind of stuff we work on with companies, is how to engage people in a more meaningful way, so that it's not just about your roles or responsibilities. It's actually about who you are as a human being. And I talk about values a lot. Like those things that are really important to people. And when you talk about, like, bring up the conversation with, like, what is your higher purpose? And if you don't know it, let's do this exercise together. So when people start engaging in more meaningful ways, not just like talking about your Netflix binge or your happy hour drink, very important stuff, but that's like more pleasure versus who are we as human beings and what is most important to us. So that's how we help people connect in a more, a deeper way.
I think that's super, super important. Those are really important conversations. When you talk about gathering the data, basically, from your employees, how do you handle, on both sides, the employer who's like, guys, I can't build utopia. Like, you guys now want lunch every day. You want things that I can't provide, right? I want the manicurist there. I want what Google has, but this is a small family business. And then on the other side, real things that would really make a difference. Like, how do you balance that? Because I remember, and I might butcher the story, but in COVID, I heard that the Spotify CEO went out to the thousands of employees and was like, we are not going to cut anybody. Like, it was like this big victory he or she had said. I don't know who the CEO is right now. I can't remember. And it was this huge victory. They figured out a way, we're not going to cut any bodies. And isn't that amazing? And someone's like, you used to, buy lunch in the office, and I want lunch every day delivered to my house. And we're like, whoa, the minds of some people and the things that they want, when you're like, they just really figured out a way to care about all of you in this really impactful way. And you're like bitching about the bagels that were offered to you in the office, and now you're missing the bagels. I don't know. So how do you balance that? Because that's why employers are scared to ask employees for things. And then employees don't get some of their needs met, is because of that.
And that's bound to happen, right? There's always going to be someone that's like, yeah, that's great, but what about this? And I think what I'm going to talk about values again, but it's so important. When there's someone like that consistently is just not happy with whatever comes, it's really a values misalignment. And it's not personal. It's like kind of like, this might not be the right place for you, because when we're doing these sort of initiatives, when we're not firing anyone, and we're doing this or this, it's because we're looking out for everyone, and we're not going to make everyone happy. But this is what we heard that would be important for us, which would be no one's getting fired. I mean, that's amazing in itself. So I think
in the worst crisis known to our country.
Why we keep on going back to, if a person just consistently just, violates the values of the company, and the values are not just words on the wall, then it's just grounds for, hey, this is not a great fit anymore.
I love that, because Kevin was really good at that at our other company. So our other company is called AfterBuzz, and he would say, they're just not AfterBuzz. So he had his values very clearly set. So would you recommend a company has their values written on a wall, here are our company values, so that everyone's seeing it and it's on the same page? Because it really was helpful for him to weed out people that didn't belong. Be like, sorry, it's not a good fit. This is not AfterBuzz. This is what AfterBuzz is. So, it was a good way to kind of identify.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. So the thing is, it's good to have those values codified. And so that is not just words on the wall, because it sounds like Kevin was actually living them.
Yes.
And this is the biggest thing. There's so many companies that have values and purpose now. 10 years ago, it was a nice to have. But now it's it's not just only stating your values, but actually defining behaviors out of those values and being that specific, so that I don't know if you remember back in the day, Enron, that company that basically squandered billions of dollars. But basically, their number one value was integrity. So poster child, right? For when you're not living the values. And we've seen it in the near recent too. Like WeWork, like Theranos, these companies where, and these are interesting now because these are very purpose-led companies, yet there's so many misalignments with values. And then it makes that conversation, it's going to be hard anyway, but at least there's a basis for it.
Yeah.
And you can point to this behavior was not lived up to. And if it consistently happens, then it's actually like, it's a social contract. It's like, look, this has happened like 30 times in a row. So this is not happening. This is not going to work.
That's so funny because I remember a hypnotherapist that we worked with over 10 years ago now, or at least maybe 10 years ago. She said, anything operating out of integrity will fall. And then I just started watching it all kind of happen with the Theranoses and the WeWorks, and it just keeps happening. So it's very interesting. Can you talk about the future proof program that you have, or the future proofing your work and life?
Yeah, it's the concept really comes back down to not really trying to chase the next thing or next career or job. It's really starting with the me. Like, what is it within you that is most important? So therefore, like you said, there's things that have been changing around us and we have to adapt. And the biggest thing I think for us as individuals is to be able to ground ourselves so that we are future proof. Like, we're not going with the trends because of it's not about the metaverse for me because that's where the future is. It's like, do you even care about it? So future proofing, is like more about asking this external questions within first, so that the next time you go to start looking for a job or, start interviewing or whatever, you have your means of what is most important to you and your values that are most important and things that you will just not say yes to. So at least you have your own boundaries. So that's how you see future proofing is like basically doing the most important work, which is not the stuff you get paid for. It's doing the work within yourself, understanding what the most important things are with purpose and values. And then that's how all these things that are chaotic and outside of our control, we're able to adapt to more because we have that groundedness within.
So what if you're in a job right now and you're starting to take stock and you realize it's not really in alignment with who you are anymore? What's your best advice?
Well, there's great resignations for a reason, right? It's pretty crazy how so many people, if you think about during a very, very uncertain time, we had the most number of people quitting or resigning over the last year and a half, millions at a time per month. So I think I would reassess, if you're feeling there's not a fit anymore, I would do the assessment of, what are the things that are not fitting anymore and why? Because sometimes if it's more superficial things, then maybe it's worth kind of sticking out and having those conversations with the manager or boss, whatever, and seeing if they can, try to address them. But I think that's the biggest thing is what is it that's bothering you? Is it really the lunch thing that you're not having free anymore every day? Or is it something just that is really cut into the core of who you are as a human being? Again, those values misalignment. If you're seeing that and that's bothering you, then do you really want to spend all your waking hours at work in that way? I think the answer is getting clearer. And the key I think to remember is the point is not to wake up in the morning and by the time you go to sleep, every moment's happy, happy, happy. That's just not realistic and feasible. But I think the point now is more of from the time you wake up to the time you sleep, do you feel fulfilled? Are you at least living and embracing not just your highs, which are great, but also understanding your lows in a day-to-day basis. So at least you feel you're spending those minutes meaningfully. They don't have to be hunky-dory because we know they won't. But I think that's the biggest, one of the, the flip side of great resignation is the great awakening or reawakening. People realizing, wait, I'm not spending my time right. Like this priority stuff is totally out of whack. So that's what I would suggest is like to assess what things are actually bothering you or you're being challenged by or you don't like, and just really sift it out. What's the difference between what's really important to you and the side stuff that really shouldn't matter as much?
Yeah, because I was going to ask you, what is understanding your lows? And is that what you just said, just kind of sifting through what's not working and figuring out maybe solutions to those things?
Yeah, there's so we do this exercise called the happiness heartbeats. And so essentially like you're the star of your own show, like, you know, the protagonist in your movie. And essentially it's going back and reflecting on your life. And it's not just work life, we believe in work life integration. Then you can actually reflect and get to see, oh wow, I got through that, because you see the low, and the fact that your success is not aren't necessarily the highs, is actually the success of coming out of a low.
Ooh.
And so by being able to see those moments along the way, you're able to, like, if you're in a low again, you get to see at least, oh, I got out of it. And there was a high that came after. And just reflecting, how did that happen? What was I feeling? What did I do? And you have to build this resilience over time. So I think for, you know, it's human nature, just like, you know, sweep things under the rug and be done with it. But I think now everything's been laid to bear. Workplaces, like, you know, stuff like burnout and disengagement is already, you know, mental health was already there, but now it's like, boom, hello, we're here. So I think it's now is the time to be able to embrace those lows. Like, yeah, like I know a lot of people had some over the last 2.5 years.
I think that's so huge, to be able to look at your lows and how you climbed out of it, so that you can build that roadmap for the future. So you know that these are the things that you did that helped, or just to even know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel,
Totally.
and that you are building your resilience, right? So I always feel like things happen to you for certain reasons. There's certain things that you need to either learn or grow with or get better at. So, you know, you'll get the lessons for resilience. So I literally just went and bought myself flowers recently, because I was like, I want to celebrate my resilience because I've got so much of it.
Nice.
And I think that it's not something that someone would normally celebrate, because you would normally celebrate the raise, the big thing that came in, the normal things Hallmark says to celebrate. But you can celebrate your resilience. I had 3 things I think I bought them for. I was celebrating my resilience.
That's awesome.
I was celebrating my strength and my patience, because I never used to have patience, and I've been building it over time. And I said, those are the 3 things I'm going to go buy myself flowers for right now, because I'm super proud of myself. And I think that's just the way you explained it, to kind of remember that there's something to celebrate for, that's worth it, from coming out of your lows, is really huge.
Yeah, I mean, I love that you bought yourself flowers to celebrate that. I think I think what's beautiful about that is, like, because, you know, like the normal reaction when people are going through lows is like, oh, you know, tomorrow's a new day. You know, it's like, that's, you know, that's not kind of where, that's not what I need right now as inspiration. And we hear like all these inspirational quotes from everyone. But the thing is, it really is so internal and individual, you know, so subjective to our own journeys. And then by being able to like reflect and say, holy shit, I'm sorry.
You can say that.
Okay. Holy crap, whatever. I got through that. And then all of a sudden it feels a different energy, rather than, you know, hearing an advice from someone else or reading an inspirational quote.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, we have lots of conversations with ourselves, and a lot of times they're negative. I just this morning woke up and I was a little bummed out about something. And then, of course, like a trike's like, there was a second thing that happened. Okay, here we go. So I was like, I'm going outside. I'm going to get into nature. I'm going to bring my little tea outside, and I'm going to just try to shift. And so I was out there and I just started talking to myself out loud. And I was like, we have to change the vibration, because none of this is real. And all of this stuff is just your current interpretation of what's happening, but maybe there's another one. And so I started kind of talking through it. And then I realized, oh, I had this so screwed up in my head. That's actually not what's happening. And furthermore, what's happened is for my normal pattern to dig myself out of a low is I start researching. And I started researching and I realized the low brought me to a new lesson and a new understanding, a new finding that is only going to help propel what I'm trying to do and trying to help people with even further. So not only was I able to dig myself out of the hole, but I was able to see the pattern of it and see that sometimes things don't go according to the plan that you think you have. And that's a good thing because our version of a plan sometimes can be very limited. And God or the universe's plan is so much bigger. So I realized after, a good 30 minutes outside that I needed to learn this next thing so that I didn't get tripped up by my limited view of what was happening. And so sometimes when the bad things, you're interpreting it as a bad thing, it's actually a good thing. And I think all of the time it can be a good thing. I thought the brain tumor was a good thing. I know my mom's journey helped me so that I can help so many people. Now, would I want my mom here more than anything? But I made the most of every second I had with her. But I also learned so much that I know is helping so many people through this show. Even Kelsey, just yesterday, you were saying you had a breakthrough and you're like, with your health that you wouldn't have learned if you weren't, doing this show and hearing my journey with my mom and everything. So I'm sharing this as it's happening because I'm like, you got to know that those lows can be good things. And we had someone on recently that said from chaos, she said, chaos comes to help us rebuild or kind of, I forget exactly how she put it. You're usually good at remembering.
I am. I don't remember that.
But anyway, that's that.
That was beautiful.
I get the gist.
You get the gist, exactly.
But I feel like, it's funny because both of you, and I want you guys to briefly geek out on this because I think both of you have come to this, and tell me if I'm wrong, but like even more to this place after both doing the Dr. Joe work.
Oh my God, I forgot that you did Dr. Joe too.
I want you guys to talk about that, like how, we know Maria's journey with it and how much it's helped her. Jen, I'm so curious how it's helped you and made you, better in what you do.
Yeah. And Kelsey told me, I was like, what?
We were at the same event.
The same one. Yeah.
Were you at
San
Fort
Diego.
Myers or San Diego? Okay, that was my first one.
Me too. So long story short, in terms of my journey there, because so everyone had crazy 2020s and then some. But for me, I had my own, and I was realizing that I had never been so down and depressed in my life. And this, not only all the stuff that happened in the world, but one of my best buds passed away. And so it took me quite a long time until like the beginning of this year to realize how low I was. And I didn't, come to admission or acceptance until then. And then because of that acceptance or awareness, then I was just like, felt so much lighter. And I just really wanted to just beginner's mind, like just anything that comes my way that normally I would say, no, 7 days is a long time, I would say no to, because I'm like, I got to get back to work. So I said yes,
Wait, hold on, Jen. Let's add to the fact that it's a meditation event for 7 days. Like,
I know.
I was like, poke my eyeballs out with a spoon. I would rather do anything other than that. And I am self-help queen.
Yeah.
But something said, you've got to go.
Yeah. Yeah. It was one of my friends that she said, like, yeah, that's the nudge that I had that got me there. And it just, I love to hear your experience. But first of all, I had to like completely surrender to this stuff that like normally I'd be like, wait a minute, like this is a little too whatever. But I completely surrendered to those notions. And
I'm just getting the chills all the way down my body.
It's so crazy that you were actually there too. And that was our first one. But by surrendering, and then like, I don't know, that one of the first meditations, we came out of it and Dr. Joe says, like, exactly, some of you might be feeling this, that something shifted within your body and you don't quite know why. And it might have jolted you out of that meditation. And it exactly what happened to me. And I never felt the physical change of what, he was leading us through, shifts within ourselves. So anyway, like and you were there for that 4 a.m. meditation.
Oh yeah. That
5
went
hours.
for 5 hours. He's like, it's 4 hours. And then I was like, we woke up and he goes, so you guys were down for 5 hours. We're like, you little shit. You tricked us.
Basically. Yeah. So that was astounding, right? Same thing with, I was like, there's no way in hell I would have done that before. But step by step, day by day, I just got more and more into this understanding of the true value of meditation. And I was thinking about that this morning, actually. It's like, if you got paid to meditate, would you meditate? Would you meditate more? And for me, after that experience, I realized my own value of meditation. So it's almost like funding my own mental health bank. Like it's like a mental health fund that would I want to do that every day? Yeah, I'd like to fund it as much as I can because I know I'm getting so much value out of it.
Wow.
So, and it grows over time.
So did you start doing the meditations before you went to the event? Or was that your first entree?
That was my first.
Wow.
So I went completely blind. I didn't even check anything out of his stuff.
Oh, you never did the progressive or anything?
Don't tell him that, but we're supposed to.
Wow. Okay. So now what? First of all, can I ask you a question or say something? You're not someone who cries a lot, right? You're not a crier.
Not really.
So I have a weird question because when I was getting the chills, I almost started crying. Did you have a real emotional experience there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I felt it. I literally almost started crying, and it took me a minute to I didn't want to not be listening to you, but at the same time I was like, why do I want to cry right now? And I'm like, oh, it was because of her. She had that experience and I was feeling it.
Wow. That's giving me chills. Yeah.
I'm like super leaning into my feelings and what I feel and just saying it out loud, even at the risk of you saying no, that I'm wrong. But I've had, people that are like, you're super psychic. So I'm just kind of like leaning into it, but I felt like I was about to lose my shit and I had to hold it together. And I'm like, oh, that probably is because we're in the moment as we're talking about what you felt there. And you must have had that. So that's so cool. So, okay. So since then, what have you done meditation wise?
So now I understand why they call it a practice. It's like you really have to literally practice it every day. And so on my ideal meditation days, once in the morning, hopefully, and I do spontaneous meditations anytime I can think about it or like sit still for a second even, and then once at night. And I've also been peppering not just Dr. Joe's stuff, but are you familiar with Thich Nhat Hanh, the Zen master, Buddhist master? He actually just passed away. He was like 90 something. But so Buddhist meditation, I've been learning from him and his teachings. He has a really great app called Plum Village, actually. So I've been balancing both of Dr. Joe's meditation. I don't know about you, but at first when I started experiencing Dr. Joe, I was like, why is this guy yelling at me? Like
in the meditation?
Huh?
In the meditation?
Yeah, because his voice could be really like powerful.
So do you know what he does? Do you know why? So I tell people before they start all the time, get ready. It's going to sound a little creepy. His meditation is like, your body. So I was creeped out in the beginning, but I surrendered and I went with it because I wanted my healing more than anything. And he can actually, with the tone of his voice, help you get to gamma brainwaves. And they've watched him with the people having the electrodes on their heads. They've watched him do it in real time. So it's almost like an assist for us. So that's why he does it.
That makes sense then.
So are you doing a 15-minute, 20-minute? Like what are the time? People always want to know how much time.
I think my average is, I would say between 15 and 30. And then once in a while, I'll do the hour ones when I can.
Yeah. Like yesterday, I did my 99-minute laying down meditation, which I love.
Ooh, that's cool.
That's a good one.
Yeah. The walking meditations are my personal favorite, actually.
I haven't been back to those. I really, really love those.
That's when I lost it, actually, when you asked earlier, when we had that moment. That's when I just had this complete emotional breakthrough in a walking meditation.
That's so cool. Well, he's forever changed my life, and I'm super grateful. You haven't gone to an advanced follow-up yet, have you?
I haven't. I was thinking about there's one coming up in Mexico. Are you going?
I just went in October. Wait, it is October. I just went recently. I don't remember when it was. Recently, I went to the Fort Myers one.
Oh, how was it?
It was amazing. Amazing. Because we had this big beach. So the one we were at in San Diego, I mean, the space outside was a little limited. The beach is so expansive in Florida. So, it's really sad to think of what happened there soon after we left, because obviously that hurricane plowed through there. But yeah, I think having a meditation practice, especially one that is kind of directive, like Dr. Joe's is directive. Like you can change your whole life, you can change your health in a very intentional way, whereas the other ones, you're just doing it and then hopefully something happens because you're resting your brain and you're giving it, blank space. I love Dr. Joe's because they're intentional. And I know that I'm seeing the results every single day, whether it's my personality, my happiness. I would walk around, when he says, you'll be happy for kind of like no reason. And I would get to a place where I was in my kitchen. I said, Kevin, I am so happy I could lift a vehicle with my hands, my bare hands. And then I remember again being in my kitchen and having a breakthrough where I'm like, I'm super fully happy inside. Like everything feels whole, everything feels happy. I don't need anyone or anything to make me happy. I'm happy from the inside out.
Yeah.
So cool.
It's it's really cool too. I had, similar feelings, and what I noticed too, like, especially right after San Diego, is that I would catch people just randomly smiling at me, like intentionally looking at me and smiling. Like there was a jogger, he was jogging up a hill and he looked over and I was driving and he smiled, like in a way that was like, wow, there's something different here, that because of the experience of what you're describing for yourself. I think that was like, there's some sort of different emanation going on from that, experience and energy. So it's kind of cool how it ripples out.
Yeah, well, you're giving a different vibration.
Totally, yeah.
And so you're getting a different vibration.
Yeah.
Kelsey, I'm so glad you reminded me of that. It's so cool. Well, Jenn, you're great. Your work is great. And it's definitely not just the future, it's the now. Friends, the book is called Beyond Happiness. And we'll put all of the information on that and Jenn and her website, jennlim.com, in the summary of this episode.
This podcast and all related content published or distributed by or on behalf of Maria Menounos or mariamenounos.com is for informational purposes only and may include information that is general in nature and that is not specific to you. Any information or opinions expressed or contained herein are not intended to serve as or replace medical advice, nor to diagnose, prescribe, or treat any disease, condition, illness, or injury, and you should consult the healthcare professional of your choice regarding all matters concerning your health, including before beginning any exercise, weight loss, or healthcare program. If you have or suspect you may have a healthcare emergency, please contact a qualified healthcare professional for treatment. Any information or opinions provided by a guest expert or host featured within website or on company's podcast are their own, not those of Maria Menounos or the company. Accordingly, Maria Menounos and the company cannot be responsible for any results or consequences or actions you may take based on information or opinions.